Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. And for all my Chinese viewers, happy National Day, guys. Happy National Day. So there's lots of amazing videos coming out on Twitter from all the celebrations in China at the moment. And you can see like amount of people. And this is Shenzhen, by the way. I can recognize the big tall tower, because I visited there once, and that's pretty much iconic tower in Shenzhen. And you can see some of these images coming out of China. It's absolutely amazing. And one thing, you guys, I don't know if you realize, to celebrate National Day in China, Iran also sent in some fireworks over Israel on National Day as well, and on the 1st of October. So that was a big coincidence. So, I don't know if you've seen these amazing drone footages as well coming out on China. 10,000 drones they used. So can you imagine these drones in a military situation, right, guys? So if you're an aircraft carrier and you got 10,000 drones coming at you, you are not going to take out 10,000 drones. You don't have enough missiles or even the Gatling gun. You will not be able to take out that many drones. They will overwhelm any aircraft carrier. So all of these Western, countries that are looking to start a war with China, just beware, guys, because it is absolutely impossible to take down 10,000 drones in one go. And Iran has proved that, this Iron Dome has been completely useless. And Iran has proved that. What they did was they sent in a couple of missiles, slow-moving missiles. They overwhelmed the Iron Dome. And then all of the fast missiles came in after, and they all did a direct hit. And that's the way to do it. If you want, you're sending some cheap drones, overwhelm all the defenses, and then the big powerful missiles and stuff can strike the aircraft carrier afterwards, and that's it. It's toast. It's sunk to the bottom of the sea. So I wanted to come and talk about a couple of stories, actually. I want to talk about this submarine story, but let me stick to the National Day railway trips. And Bloomberg is starting to talk nice stories about China now. I mean, for a couple of years, Bloomberg has been talking, doom and gloom and all the bad stories about China and stuff like that. They're starting to talk good stories. And he says more than 21 million trips were made on the first day of National Day. And I remember Bloomberg, a couple of years ago, they came up with a story saying, Chinese high-speed rail is going to become bankrupt, is losing money, and they have to close it down because it's losing money. China's losing money, and all of these doom and gloom stories about, how these high-speed rail trains have been a failure and stuff like that. A couple of years later, now they're saying, oh, look, more than 21 million trips have been made in one day in the holiday period. So just to kind of give you an understanding on how many people that have traveled in one day, 21 million. 21 million is probably more a figure of how many people travel in London in 1 year. Can you imagine how many? This is a year's travel in UK, in London. 21 million people traveling in a year, and they all travel in one day in China. So imagine how much money China makes just from these travel, alone. And we're talking about, billions of yuan that kind of gets generated per day. And these high-speed rails, they're not failing. China looks at the big picture. Yes, in the beginning they were not making any money, but that's because when these high-speed rails were being built, it was a time during COVID, so a lot of people were in lockdown. They couldn't travel to city, so they were losing money. But China looks at the long term. What it was doing was linking all these cities one after another, linking them with high-speed rail. that meant that a lot of workers can travel between cities to work. You know, you know, also like businesses can trade with one another very quickly. So if you're a business from a neighboring city, you can trade with your other businesses in a neighboring city, and trade becomes better between the cities. And when trade becomes better between two cities, both cities develop at the same time, because businesses develop, they make more money, and they expand. And workers, they need more workers, and these cities, they develop over time because of the access to the rest of China. If you have access to the rest of China using high-speed rail, your business will develop because you can sell goods to other cities, not just neighboring cities, but to other cities in China, which means you make money, you expand, you build more offices, you hire more workers. And that's how it works, and this is how these small cities develop in China, because they have access to high-speed rail, and they look at the long term. China looks at the long term. As these cities develop, as people get richer in these cities and people travel more, then that becomes better for the Chinese economy, and there's more consumption and people get richer. And that's all. That's the big picture that China looks at. They don't look at short-term goals, they look at long-term goals, and that's what it's all about. So I wanted to talk about this submarine story. I don't know if you heard it, guys, but Wall Street Journal basically accused a Chinese submarines sinking in the Yangtze River. And people who wrote the article, they're obviously a bit, they don't even know much about China. They don't know much about how deep the Yangtze River is. So a submarine does not fit in the Yangtze River, because it's not, the Yangtze River, anyone that knows China very well, it's not that deep. So a lot of people pointed it out in Twitter. They said that, this story is fake because the Yangtze River is not very deep, and it's impossible for a submarine to travel through it. And the Wall Street Journal journalists looked rather stupid, and they actually changed the article. And they changed the article and they changed it to something different. And they said that China had an accident, basically. They didn't say it's Wuhan. They said they wouldn't say it's next to Wuhan anymore. They basically said there's been an accident, blah, blah, blah. Again, here's what they say. China's nuclear submarine mishap points to challenge of catching up with the US. So they changed the article completely. The previous one had said that Chinese submarine sank in the Yangtze River next to Wuhan. So it's rather funny. And somebody else pointed this out, that every accusation is basically something wrong with the US itself. So in the US, you can see lawmakers to investigate faulty carrier welding at Newport News shipbuilding. So the US is having problems with submarines in the United States. So they basically used the story to distract against China. And you can see somebody wrote, "I've been fooled by the Chinese nuclear sub sinking news by the Wall Street Journal. It was misdirection." It's actually American subs that are falling behind and having major issues. And they released this story a couple of days after China basically sent a supersonic, hypersonic missile flying over Guam and Hawaii, and all of the Americans were panicking, thinking, "Oh my God, what the hell is that?" And they released this submarine story a few days later. So it does sound like it's misdirection. They obviously don't know what they're talking about. They're just going along with, satellite images. Nobody in the West knows the Chinese submarine kind of program. Nobody's going to talk to them about it, so they're just making up stories basically as they go along. So I just thought this was rather funny, and so I'll finish up with the final news. The final news: Huawei basically have tested a brand new chip. It's called Ascend 910C, and this chip is supposed to be just as powerful as NVIDIA's H100 chips. And NVIDIA's H100 chips are actually banned. They're banned to sell it in China because the Biden administration banned this chip to be sold in China because they don't want Chinese companies to get an advantage. So NVIDIA built another lower class chip to sell to China. And this chip was very, very low quality, low speed. It wasn't very good. And the Chinese government has announced that they have advised all of the Chinese companies, especially the big companies like Baidu and Alibaba. They've advised them not to use the NVIDIA H100 chip, and they've advised them to use local chips instead. So a few weeks later, Huawei released this Ascend 910C, and now at the moment it's been tested. It's been tested by these major companies like Baidu and Alibaba and Tencent and companies like that. And once the testing is complete, Huawei can sell it, pretty much sell it to the rest of the Chinese market. And the American companies are absolutely livid. NVIDIA shares has tumbled. I don't know if you guys have seen NVIDIA shares. They are starting to tumble because NVIDIA is about to lose the Chinese market. And when this chip comes out properly, NVIDIA will lose a huge slice of the Chinese market. And Chinese market is a big slice of NVIDIA's business. I think 40% of NVIDIA's business is China. So they're going to lose a huge amount of business in China. And their shares are going to plummet big time. So if you have NVIDIA shares, guys, time to sell is now because it's not going to be looking too good. So yeah, I think Chinese chips are making headways at the moment. There's also talk about Americans asking ASML to stop kind of shipping DUV machines and also stop servicing them as well. And ASML is kind of pushing back at the moment, but we don't know what's going to happen. But China has already made plans at the moment. There's a company called SMEE, and they've released 28 nanometer machines. And there's also, I think that there's another company or a university has figured out how to make 8 nanometers chips without using EUV and without using DUV. So it's a completely new technology. And they're also looking into, photonic chips as well, and also chips with graphene as well. And there's lots of other ways that China is looking to kind of make these chips beyond the 1 nanometer and 2 nanometers level. And China has got a lot more stem cell subjects, students than America in the West, 3 times as many STEM subject students. So eventually somebody will figure out something, a fast way to make these chips. It's just a matter of time. China has already caught up in the low-end quality chips, and they have already taken over this market. For example, China used to spend more on chips than oil back in the day before Trump puts all these sanctions. They used to spend around 600 billion, or I believe along those figures, on chips from the West. Then Trump put these sanctions on China, and China's been putting a lot of money into local companies to kind of come up with some solutions. But since then, SMIC and many other Chinese companies have managed to figure out how to make low-end chips in quality and cheaply as well. And now instead of buying $600 billion worth of chips from abroad, now China is a leading exporter of chips abroad as well. And these are lower quality chips, by the way, but they are still making, I think I saw some figures of 60 billion they've made this year alone just selling low-end chips. Eventually China will catch up and start, making high-end, not only high-end chips, but high-end machines as well to make these chips. And they'll be making it, they'll be the first country to make the full kind of project life cycle of EUV and DUV, because I don't know if you guys know that ASML basically uses a lot of components from different countries to build these machines. Like the laser comes from United States, the lens come from Germany, Carl Zeiss. The software comes from United States. A lot of the components come from United States. The neon gas used to come from Ukraine, not anymore. Now it comes from Russia and other countries. So they need a lot of components to put these machines together. But China is going to make it 100% homegrown in-house. And that means none of the supply chain will be at risk. If America wanted to sanction certain supply chains, they cannot do that, because if everything is made in-house, it's impossible for America to kind of sanction China. And plus, they control the supply chain, which means they're not going to have an incident like they did in Lebanon, where Israel takes control of the supply chain and starts putting explosives in batteries, and then these batteries end up in somebody's home and get blown up. So if China controls the supply chains, everything's controlled from within in-house. It's impossible for that to happen. No Israeli company is going to start hacking these Chinese goods and putting explosives in. It will be absolutely impossible. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak about that, guys. So I'll speak to you in the next video. Don't forget to like and share. Take care for now.